Star Hills is one of the nicest, kindest persons I've met. Her generosity, I cannot tell you how she's been to me. And this is outrageous. The cops in Colorado uh, kidnapped her, tortured her, held her prisoner for 15 days. Now they have her in bondage through a bond uh, for $5,000 value. And the DA says he wants to dismiss the case, but they want her in the courtroom to do it. Star Hills, welcome to Joe Baker's Remedy Report.
Thank you, Joe. You sure appreciate it.
That's the thing between you and I. We talk about forgiveness on this show a lot, and Star and I, Star follows my work at forgivenesscapital.com, remedycoin.com, and antimoney.net. And, I came up with this harebrained idea. How about we issue a forgiveness pact between each other, that we agree to forgive each other for anything and agree to be forgiven. And it's bilateral, so it goes both ways, according to the contract, the forgiveness public license. So Star and I have a mutual bond, I guess you would say, or a trust of infinite value. I mean, there's nothing that can come between us about our friendship. So, now that the police are messing with Star, I've realized I have the right, because they're harming me by harming her. So this is kind of cool because a lot of people have their approach. Everybody has their own approach at legally moving into a dispute with the police brutality and all this kind of stuff. I'm talking too much. How are you today?
Well, not at all, really, Joey. I'm so kind of overwhelmed by everything, and I'm still in a state of trauma, I guess, because I've been trying to deal with these things. This happened on August 25th, and people can see the prior show that we did, but we didn't really go into too much of the details about what happened. So,
First of all, I want to swear you in. I am the judge, jury. I'm the judge, jury, the prosecutor, and everything. This is my court, a court of forgiveness, and we're here to hear your testimony, and I want you to swear under penalty of perjury or whatever, that whatever you're about to say is true and complete.
Well, I tell the courts, it's against my faith to swear, but I affirm that I will tell the truth to the best of my ability, and my word is my bond. My yes is my yes, and my no is my no.
That'll do. I like that.
I will not lie, so help me God.
Wonderful. Fantastic. We're going to use this for affidavit purposes. We'll make the transcript, and I'll be sending that in notices to the mayor and to the sheriff and to all those guys, so you can say hi to them.
Yeah. Hi to all the racketeering criminals who are human trafficking out there for a paycheck. That's basically what the whole scandal is there is no authority. People are not operating under oaths anymore. They won't verify their oaths to anyone. They're just racketeering and they all get a paycheck from the same source. So that would be a conflict of interest also. I mean, the sheriffs, the police, the judges, the prosecutor, the police, all the public defender, all of the different agencies get their paycheck from the same source. And so how is that not a conflict of interest? How can they all be paid by the same source, but yet some of them are alleged to be working for you and others alleged to be working against you. From what I can see, they're all in cahoots together and colluding together, and it's like the public defender and the prosecutor and the judge are all playing good cop, bad cop. But it's really weird in this situation because it's almost like the prosecutor seems to be acting like he's trying to say that that my punishment already exceeded any crime, even if I did commit the crime, and yet, and that he's opting to dismiss this case, but then he won't dismiss it unless I'm physically present in the courtroom. It doesn't make any sense. He already admitted that there really is no crime committed, but then also in the same breath he says something about he has a concern for my
courtesy and obligation to the court.
Courtesy and obligation to the court, or
because you weren't there,
or that I don't that I seem to have a little problem with authority. Whereas these people don't have any authority. How can anybody have authority if there's nobody they're accountable to? If they don't verify their oaths, then they're not accountable to anyone. Who is to hold them responsible if they're committing crimes against people and injuring people?
Go into that a little further. What do you mean about that? About verifying their oaths and holding them accountable? So their oath makes them accountable, kind of like the way they feel that a person's bond makes them accountable to come back to court.
Well, yeah, because in the, say in the Constitution, or even in a law dictionary, if you look up the word oath, it will say this is like a promise that you take to a supreme being. There has to be a supreme authority. You're not taking the oath to a lamppost or something. Who's going to hold you accountable? Your neighbor or a judge? Who are you taking that oath under? Who are you taking it to? And that and all of their decrees say that their oaths have to be to a supreme being. They have to be accountable to a supreme authority, which is God. And God can be whatever God is to you. And it even states in many law dictionaries that if you look up God in the law dictionaries, it is it's subject to your own interpretation. It's something within you. And so, in other words, when you take an oath to a supreme being, you are the only one. If you're lying or you're going against that promise, it's just like if you promise something to anybody else. Who's going to hold you accountable for that? If you're lying and or don't follow through on your promise. Only you're going to convict yourself inside. It's going to eat you alive if you lie or steal or cheat or whatever. So who's going to hold them to, if they're racketeering and they're colluding together and they're not operating under those oaths, then there is no accountability of these people, and they can just get away with whatever they want. So,
and that's what they do because there's no legislative authority. If you ask them to prove their source of authority, they can't do it because there's no legislative authority for any attorney to operate, to do business. There's no such thing as a license to practice law. That's all private bar association cards. It's not an actual license that the government issues.
So there's Cole. This is my husband.
Hi, Cole.
Hi.
And
thanks for helping us get this all set up, Cole. You did a great job. You did a lot of work in a short
much
period of
more,
time.
he's much more technically inclined than I am with computers and phones, and I would have never figured this out, how to do this.
Well, believe me,
Um,
you've got the motivation to do it. It probably would have taken you longer, but I'll bet you'd have figured it out.
but since he stepped in, maybe I should just tell a little bit about what happened.
Yes.
That we were, we were getting milk from a farmer who was also working at a school, and so she asked us to just pick up the milk from her out of the back of her car while she was at school. And so to make the long story short, because we told this story and you can see it on videos on my YouTube channel, Earthica Star. And you can also see the videos of the actual police assaults. So we just pulled up to the school. And Cole jumps out and grabs the milk and leaves her the empty jars and picks up the new milk. And we just go. And so this time, he just parked in the middle of the street outside of where her car was, jumped out, and her car ended up being locked. So he sat in the side of his van, and I was sitting in the front seat, just facing forward, not paying attention to what's going on behind me at all. And he started to text the teacher. I didn't even know that the car was locked or anything. I'm just not paying attention to anything. We're just there to pick up the milk, and I'm minding my own business. And so he's texting the teacher to see if she can come unlock the trunk. And just within minutes, the cops are just there. And I really did not know what happened, if Cole had a conversation with them already or anything. I didn't even know the car was locked, and or why we were sitting there a little bit longer than normal. But I just turned around. I see this woman standing there in front of him, and she looks me directly in the eyes and says, "Can I see some ID?" And really, in that moment, a bunch of things went through my head, like, why are we still sitting here? Why is Cole sitting in the back seat? Who is this woman? I thought she was a security guard at first for the school. I didn't realize she was a cop. I didn't see the cop cars or anything.
Well, first, it should be prefaced that, of course, the officer asked me what we were doing there. First questions, I obviously told her I'm there to get milk. And as I told her that, she turned her head and looked at the empty jars that I had set on the street behind the car. This is an important detail because
it is.
After I had told her that we were there for legitimate reason to get milk, and she saw the jars, there's her evidence. I'm texting the teacher currently, and then she goes about asking for ID. And
also, I didn't know why she was looking at me, because I just turned around. It's the first thing I noticed, is that she looked at me and said, "Can I see some ID?" And I might have vaguely heard something before that, about suspicion or something, but just a split second of something.
Because your hearing, talk about your hearing.
Right. I'm very hard of hearing. And plus I'm sitting in the front seat facing the other direction, and all this is going on behind me. So if she had had a conversation with Cole before that, I didn't hear it or know anything. Well, I didn't know if she had asked him for ID or anything. My point
was to say that the officer's actions was retaliatory because she had already known why we were there, and then she wrote on it going about asking for ID, but she had no authority to do that to begin with. And then it just got triggered. She got triggered with Star saying that's none of your business, which is absolutely the truth.
I didn't even know who she was. I didn't know she was a cop or anything.
But the officer's actions were retaliatory after that point.
Right. So as soon as she asked me, and I didn't know if she was if she had already asked Cole for ID. I didn't know what had just transpired within just the seconds before that. If she had a conversation with him, or even why Cole was still sitting there.
I think he was saying, talk about your hearing.
But yeah,
We did.
so I'm hard of hearing.
No,
Yeah.
that random hearing.
Oh, you mean the court hearing or my
No, your
physical hearing?
ears and
Oh, yeah,
how you hear.
right.
So let me ask about this retaliatory thing. What was she retaliating for?
Well, so I just turned around. I looked at her. She says, "Can I see some ID?" She looked me right in the eyes, and so I didn't even know who she was or why she was there. So I just said, "Well, that's none of your business." And then she immediately says, "Step out of the van." And I said a few other things like, "I have no obligation to answer your questions or to follow your orders. I never joined the military. I'm not a member of the body politic." And I rattled off some things like that. And then she ordered me again, "Step out of the van," kind of a thing.
Threatening with taser.
Right. And then the next thing I know, she's at my door now.
Let me stop for a second, because Cole, you said that, but I don't think it'll get in the transcript. Say it again. She threatened you?
Was threatened with the taser. Yeah, she was pointing a taser gun at her.
Right. So she moved from the door in the side doors where Cole was. She was standing in front of him, over to the front door in the passenger seat where I was sitting. And she's pointing a taser at me now. I mean, this went down in a matter of seconds, where she asked, "Can I see your ID?" I said, "That's none of your business." She says, "Step out." I said, "No. And I'm not obliged to follow your orders, and I'm not a member of the body politic." And the next thing I know, she's standing in my door now. And I closed the door as I saw her coming over there, but the window was down, so she just opened it and pointed a taser at me. And she started yelling and screaming and saying, "Get out of the van, I'm going to tase you," or whatever. I mean, at that point, I reached and grabbed my phone and started it, managed to unlock it, switch it to video, and start recording. But the video wasn't pointing at her. I don't know, it was pointing all over the place, because all of a sudden I felt disoriented, like I was hit with some kind of a frequency. It wasn't the taser, but I started to go like just all wonky, and I didn't know what was happening, and I was just trying to record it. And then I just have automatically, I guess I was saying, how can you morally justify injuring a peaceful being? And I tried to ask, "What's your cause of action?" But she just kept yelling and cutting me off, and threatening me with the taser. And then so she pulls me out of the van, I guess, or I wasn't fighting her or kicking at her or yelling or anything else. I was just making true statements as I know them to be, but I was very disoriented and it felt like I was having some weird frequency attack or something.
I did see the video, so I can attest to what you're saying. This is a very good characterization of it. But what we can't tell in the video is about the disoriented nature of the effects of her pointing that device at you.
Right, like maybe there is a lesser function of the taser that deploys a different kind of frequency that disables you or something. So that's what I suspect maybe was happening. Either that, or it was just the shock of everything happening so fast that I just went into some altered state or something. I don't know what was going on, but I was still managed to start my camera, and I still managed to iterate some things that I felt were important, like, how can you justify injuring a peaceful being who's doing no harm? And then I was telling her that, this is a kidnapping and an assault, and you're operating under color of law. In other words, impersonating an officer under color of law. And by continuing, you agree to pay me, I think I said 10 million silver dollars. And she responded to that. And she said, well, that's fine. And then she continued. So in my experience, that means that she agreed to pay me, and she continued, and thus agreeing that she would pay me 10 million silver dollars for her assaults and attack. And then there were other officers. After she got me out of the van, there was at least one more that was helping her put me up against the front of the van. And at that point, I had handed the phone to Cole and said, keep filming. And then Cole had started his camera too already. So now he had two cameras, and they were kind of pointed all over the place, but you could see some of it.
Did
And
the
I'm sure,
did the officers have body cams?
yes. So yeah, I'm sure they did. I was, well, I'll just continue to what happened right
Yes.
then. Was they put me up against the front of the van, and the second male officer who showed up was saying, you're not under arrest. You're not under arrest. And I think he said that at least 3 times. While the other female who was assaulting me and yelling and screaming, don't resist arrest, and all this stuff. And the other guy's saying, you're not under arrest. And she's saying, don't resist. So yeah, it makes no sense to me why they were assaulting me, what their problem was, other than that I did not jump when she asked me for ID and comply with what she was doing, and that triggered her and her ego or whatever. And people with badges think that everybody is supposed to do what they tell them. They don't have any respect for human rights or people's privacy, or that they're just minding their own business and not doing anything. And the really bizarre thing is that, as far as I know, they had never verified with anybody why we were there to satisfy their suspicion that, I found out later they thought we were pedophiles stalking children in front of a school. And then they changed that to interfering with school staff activity. And so if any of that was true, they had hauled me away, handcuffed in a police car, and let Cole go already. And they had not verified anything yet, why we were there, that we had a legitimate reason to be there. They hadn't verified that yet. Even when I was in the cop car, and as they were putting me in the cop car, after I was already handcuffed, that female agent came up behind me and grabbed the handcuffs and slammed them down on my wrist as hard as she could. This is like 8-9 weeks later now. This is November 1st or something. And that happened on August 25th. My hands are still numb from those handcuffs. That's how tight they were.
I know that can be, this is Joe. I know that it can be really painful, because I had handcuffs on me, and I had nerve damage that lasted for over a year.
Right. And I think that she caused some serious nerve damage to my wrists. And there was no reason for her to slam those down tighter on me as they're putting me in the car after I'm already handcuffed. There's no reason for that. That was just retaliatory, excessive force, and it was an assault and battery. And I mean, the whole thing, the taser, that is like a death threat to somebody my age. To be hit with a taser, and they have no idea. I had told her right then when they were first handcuffing me, I said, I'm a musician, and I use my hands for a living. You don't need to put cuffs on me so tight and injure me. There's no reason for that. And when I say that, then she comes and slams him down tighter as hard as she could, as hard as she possibly could.
Excuse me. I'm looking on Cole's Facebook page for the video. People are asking for the link. How do I find it?
You can also give them my Earthica Star on YouTube, and there's my woman nabber story, and also the actual kidnapping.
Oh, that is on your page.
Yeah, it's on the
Earthica
YouTube
Star?
channel. But then Cole also has his from his camera somewhere on his Facebook page, maybe. I'm not sure.
Maybe if I look on videos here.
There is so much information because the whole time after that happened, and when I was in jail for 15 days, we had 2 to 3 conversations on the phone every day, and all those calls were recorded, and my dear girlfriend Emily set it up to where she could upload them to Facebook, and
Oh,
people could
yes.
listen to those calls. And Cole did the same thing. He recorded all of our calls, and plus people were behind the scenes while I was in the jail, were calling the police and calling the public defender, calling the district attorney, the sheriff's station, trying to get things done, and nobody was cooperating with anybody. But we were trying to pass the information back and forth, and I was trying to think of everything I could in there. But they just kept assaulting me in the jail time and time again, making me walk down long corridors, shackled to go to court every time, 3 different times. And of course, the food they feed you is very toxic. But, they asked me when they finally booked me, like 2 or 3 days later, because I had to comply under threat with the booking process, or they would not let me have a phone call or contact anyone. So after a couple of days, I finally complied with them so that I could get a phone call. And but yeah, they kept me in like a solitary cell for the first day and a half, and then they moved me to a second one, which was a quarantine cell. And still for 2 or maybe 3 days, I had no communication with anyone. They tried to get me to fill out some papers to get out on OR, and that was just because they wanted to try to get an ID from me. And I hadn't given them any name, no address or anything like that. And I wasn't playing their game.
For how
And
many days did you not
for,
give them ID or name?
for well, about 3 days, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. And then finally, I just couldn't take any more. I had to get a phone call and talk to somebody. And what I was witnessing in there was just unbelievable, intimidation and coercion and all this stuff. And they were trying to feed me this food. So they said I couldn't get a phone call until I went through the booking process, and they got fingerprints and stuff like that and got me to agree to something. So I had to do it, and I went ahead and just signed the stuff and put under threat, duress, coercion, and fraud, and told them the whole time, every person who I talked to or dealt with me, I said, I don't consent to any of this, and this is under threat and duress. And they're just like, well, that's fine. We don't need your consent, and we don't care if you're under threat or duress or anything. They don't understand that anything gotten by force under threat is fraud, and fraud voids everything from the beginning as if it never happened.
Yeah, I intend to go maybe, I don't like the Securities and Exchange Commission, but what they're doing with these financial instruments with you is clearly fraud. And if the Securities and Exchange Commission is good for anything, it ought to be for going after these crooks.
Right. And so after they put me in the police car, and they just let Cole go. They didn't charge him with a parking violation. He was parked out in the middle of the street. They didn't verify why we were there yet with the school milk lady or anything, and just let him go. And in the whole pretense that they were talking to us was that they were suspicious that, we didn't have a legitimate reason to be there. So they never verified that we did have a legitimate reason and let Cole just go.
Why does anybody need to be able to have a legitimate reason to be anywhere?
Right. But, why are we parked in the middle of the street in front of a school? I mean, that might be suspicious to some people, and I can understand that maybe they would have a suspicion. But why would they attack me, not the guy who parked there and whose van it was? Because they're saying that the charges are obstructing with school activities or school staff. We weren't even on school property, and I didn't park there, and it wasn't my van, and I'm not the driver. And they let Cole go before they had verified that we did have a reason to be there. And hauled me away just because I didn't identify myself to someone.
So you've identified about 20 things where they've caused, where they've forced you to do something against your will and or coerced you into these things. Can you recount, can you shoot through them as quickly as you can? The ones you remember anyway.
Well, I mean, the violations that they were like impersonating an officer under color of law, assault and battery.
Because at that point they wouldn't give you their oath or.
Right. Well, they hadn't given me any cause of action or why they were even talking to us.
Mm-hmm.
So
is that something they agreed to pay? Is that something they agreed to pay you the 10 million coins for? Those are the ones I'm interested in a list right off the bat.
Just by assaulting me. And that's when I said, by continuing to assault me, you agree to pay me. So by your actions, you agree. So if you continue, then you just made an agreement with me. And she even orated, well, that's fine. So I guess that meant she agreed. And she continued to assault me. So anyway, I also know that by law or, or whatever they call law, that the minute somebody threatens you with a taser, that is a death threat. And it's also a terrorism threat. There's a whole lot of violations there. I mean, why would you just immediately do that? Threaten to tase somebody just for not complying with you when you haven't even told them why you're there or anything, just because they didn't identify themselves to you. And I didn't know who she was.
Clearly, she didn't have any training on how to behave, and has no idea about how to.
Right. So these are also human rights violations, human dignity violations, assault and battery, acting under color of law without authority. That means you're acting outside of your authority. It's a presumption of authority where you don't have any authority. Then also they falsely imprisoned me. It was a unwarranted arrest. You have to have a warrant to arrest somebody. You can't just take them, then all kinds of due process violations. You need to take someone to a judge to let them hear your side of the story before you put them in a cage and torture and punish them for 2 weeks and keep threatening them in there also time and time again. Um, it's a torture chamber in there, and what I witnessed in there was just absolutely horrifying. But just let's just go back to on the way to after they put me in the police car and she slammed the cuffs down on me. Oh, I told the other officer who was trafficking me to the jail. I said, these cuffs are way too tight. And I was telling him the same spiel that, how can you justify injuring a peaceful being? I'm not hurting anyone. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not committing any crime. How can you justify this? Taking me off to jail. Um, and I said, the cuffs are too tight. They're cutting off my circulation. And I was telling him also, I'm a musician and I use my hands to support myself. And, um, this is causing me serious injury. And he said, well, would you like to go to the hospital and have them checked and to see if they're too tight? And I know they're too tight. My circulation is being cut off and it hurts. And he wouldn't loosen them. He said he couldn't loosen them for me. You would think that just as a human being that the guy could loosen the cuffs, right? And he witnessed the girl tighten them down. So, he knew it was retaliatory. And even before he put me in the car, I said, I won't go into your car willingly. And he said, so I'm going to have to force you. And I said, well, I'm not going in willingly. And he was very gentle and he was a nice guy. And so he kind of made it look like he was forcing me into the car.
Mm-hmm.
But, I just didn't want it to be willing, that I was doing anything willingly that they could construe as my consent,
Right.
So
It's your habit, custom and practice to always make a record of your objection.
Right. And that's it. They're filming you. And I'm hoping that Cole was filming me, but he didn't really have the camera on me at that time. But I figured, they're going to have that on their dash cam or their body cam videos, and they're going to see that at some point that I didn't get in the car willingly. I didn't consent to any of it. I wasn't complying with them. It was all under threat. And so anyway, the male cop was pretty nice, and he just kind of gently grabbed me by the shoulder and made it look like he was pushing me into the car, and I wasn't fighting him. I just wanted to make it look like that so that it wasn't me just willingly getting into the car. And
you have a very strong belief about this, about that if you were seen to comply, that means that you're submitting to their
right, that I'm contracting with them or whatever. I'm going along with them or giving them authority or whatever. So, or legitimizing their authority, and I'm not. I just will not.
I've known you since 2009, I would guess, maybe a little earlier, and I can bear testimony to the fact that you are this is very much a part of your mindset, and it's kind of baked into you, and you're acting honorably according to everything and that this is important. And I know you are a person who believes very much in justice and what's right, and
That's right. And nobody has authority to tell another person what they can or can't do unless they committed a crime and they witnessed it. Other than that, we all have the right to our privacy and going about our way and doing no harm and not to be questioned or assaulted by people just because they're wearing badges. That doesn't give them authority. The only way that we give up our own free status in this world is by harming another, causing injury. And unless somebody witnesses that, they can't just come up and say, well, they have authority over you because they're wearing a badge. Unless you're doing something wrong and they are witnessing it. Or if they have somebody else who is a firsthand witness and who's willing to testify and willing to testify under perjury, under the, penalty if they're lying. But if it's somebody with a badge or somebody in the government and they're alleging to have seen you commit a crime, they have to be able to, and they're they're just inventing that and making that up. Then their oath is the only thing that's going, and their bond is the only thing that's going to compensate you if you're injured by them, because they don't have the authority to just say, you have to tell me your name or you have to show me something unless they see you commit a crime. But they can't just walk up to somebody who's doing nothing. Well, they can, but they may not by law. Yes, they can physically just walk up and beat you over the head, but that doesn't mean that it's lawful. And that doesn't mean that it's not an assault because they're wearing a badge. They can just get away with it. But they do get away with it because all of their buddies, the judges and the prosecutors and the sheriffs and the police and even the public defenders, everybody is in cahoots together and they're all going to back each other up. And no matter what you say, they're going to railroad you and just run roughshod over everything that you do. And that's what they're doing now in the courts. In this case, they're just saying, oh, well, the prosecutor's saying, well, it looks like, there really wasn't a basis for anything. There's no real complaint and you were already put in jail and punished for 2 weeks and that would exceed anything that, even if you did commit a crime. I mean, he's admitting this on the record in the court.
I heard it.
Yeah. And then he's saying, but I'm not going to dismiss it unless you're here physically. What does that mean? How many crimes are these people going to commit before they are held accountable? I mean, that's going to cost them a lot. It's malicious prosecution, at the very least. And it's the same thing with the prosecutor and the public defender and all of them and the judges as it is with the cops. They're acting outside of any oaths or any oversight. There's nothing to make them accountable if they're injuring me further. They're saying, well, if you don't come back to court, it's going to cost you $5,000 and we'll take out a warrant for your arrest. What did you arrest me for in the first place? Resisting arrest? You arrested me for resisting arrest? Does that make any sense?
No. This is a fantastic case. I mean, it shows so much of the absurdity in the court system and their presumptions, and their demand for for respect, but they lose it all by their actions. Every one of them that stands up for this stuff, and I don't know how the prosecutor can't just dismiss the case
Oh,
right.
he can, but he won't. Why won't he? Because he backhands it and says, "Oh, but we think you have a little problem with authority, so we want to teach you a lesson." You know?
Did he say that specifically, or
No,
you?
but he did say something to that effect. You know, well, you know, it concerns me that you have this little problem with authority or something. Yes, I have a problem with people who don't have any authority and exercise tyranny and force and assault and battery and terrorist threats and upon you and injure you for doing nothing. That is not authority. And I have a problem with that. I have a problem with you thinking that that's authority.
It's being a bully, is what it is.
Right,
Well, I mean, that's part of it. Is that their idea of authority includes bullying?
right. It's the gang, a gangster, a thug. No
Um,
different than a street gang coming up to you and assaulting you. It is no different. Yes, I would have a problem with them doing that too. And then they could say, well, you seem to have a problem with our authority. You know, can't you see we're gangsters and we have guns and we could kill you? Oh, yeah, I do see that. And I guess I'll take that chance because I'm still not going to agree that you have authority, that gives you authority. You know, maybe it's a smart thing to do. And, you know, some people are a little mad at me that I don't just say, "Oh, yes, sir. Thank you very much for the assault. Um, I really needed that. You certainly taught me a lesson and straightened me out. I'll be sure that next time someone points a gun at me to not call them a bully." And I'll just say, "Oh, yes, sir."
um, you called me earlier today, and you were describing about how difficult it's been for you to get to sleep at night and how to function and how to think clearly and stuff. So we talked on the phone a while, and I tried to help you sort some things out. Um, you recognized that that you saw me after I had been traumatized, and how difficult it was. And this is something that people need to know and understand, that after someone's traumatized like this, it's very hard for them to get everything together in order to fight back or sue or even comply, uh, to do anything. And you end up being in fear for your life because you've seen it firsthand. What Cat's gonna go get food.
Right. I mean, I'm afraid that if I went back to their courts, that they would just hold me in contempt or find another reason to kidnap me again and put me in a cage and just make something else up, just like they did in this case. They couldn't just arrest me for resisting arrest, so they had to say that I was interfering with the school. They had to make something up, and they'll do the same thing again. So why would I go back and and put myself in the position where they could grab me again physically, you know? And we didn't even think about doing the hearing on the phone. Um, we were just calling the public defender to see if the prosecutor was going to drop the charges yet or not, because the the officer who assaulted me, her supervisor told Cole while I was still in the jail that, "Oh, don't worry, the charges are probably just going to get dropped." You know, I'm like, well, why are they holding me here then if they don't even have any charges? You know, so they were trying to make something up, I guess, and come up with something, a reason to charge me with resisting arrest. What was I arrested for? Um, in the first place, just not obeying a military command. I'm not in the military, so I'm not inclined to follow orders and obey commands. You know, they don't have the authority to command people privately, you know, out there on the street. That's not their job. And I don't have any obligation to follow somebody's orders just because they're wearing a badge. You know, I mean, people say, well, it would have been smart. Don't get yourself hurt. Just do what they say. Well, then if I just do what they say, then I'm agreeing that they have authority. And I don't agree with that. They have to prove that they have some kind of authority. And the only authority they could possibly have is if they witnessed me committing a crime. And that certainly wasn't the case. I was just sitting in a van privately minding my own business. And they just came out of the blue and assaulted me, demanding that I jump through their hoops or tell them what they wanted to hear. But then they just let Cole go, and that's what makes no sense at all. He didn't get charged with illegal parking in the middle of the street, obstructing school staff, anything. And they had not verified anything yet before they kidnapped me for obstructing school staff. And I didn't even, I'm just riding along with him. I didn't park there. It wasn't my van. I'm not the licensed driver or any of that.
So at the very least, they could be, you know, according to their own rules and laws and stuff, they could be gotten for unequal application of justice.
Yeah, that's another one. So I don't know. I wish I had my notes in front of me, but you know, there was a lot of stuff. Like they asked me when I went into the, well, first of all, as they're taking me to the jail, and I asked him to please loosen the cuffs, and he wouldn't. So he wants to take me to the hospital. So we go to a hospital, and the nurse comes in and she checks the cuffs, and my hands were totally purple, completely numb, swollen. I could see they were already swollen. And the nurse said, no, the cuffs are fine. They're not too tight. And she says, I can slip a finger between your wrist and the cuff, which was a lie. She didn't even try to slip a finger in there. She just said that. And I said to her right there, and that would be on a body cam or on the hospital cameras or both, that I said to her, why are you lying? My hands are purple. Can't you see they're purple and they're completely numb? I can't feel them. I'm in a lot of pain. Why can't you just loosen them? And then all that did, going to the hospital, was delay getting the cuffs off and getting to the jail where they would take the cuffs off. And while I was at the hospital, another agent came in with an electronic device wanting to fingerprint me, put my fingers on the device. So I told him I don't consent to that. And I tried to make a fist. This hand doesn't make a fist. It's been injured years ago, and that's as much as it will bend. So I can't even bend those knuckles if I wanted to. So he was able to pry my hands open and put them on this electric device. And then for like 10 minutes, at least 10 minutes, I would say, he just sat there looking dumbfounded and looked at the officer who was transporting me or trafficking me and said, nothing's coming back. It's like she doesn't exist. And, you know, that was just like, I don't know what to say about that. But eventually it did render a name. But I guess not too much more information than that. But before I left that hospital, they still didn't have a name for me or anything. And then as he was taking me to the jail from the hospital, I heard the name Star Hills come over the radio. And then also, I was telling that cop, and he was trying to be so nice. He really was. His name was Ferro Ricardo. So we're just gonna. He told me that was his first name. You know, because usually when you ask them their name, they just say Agent Smith, you know, or whatever, like in the Matrix, right? Like their first name is Agent and their last name is Smith, you know, or
Yeah,
Deputy Dog, or you know, Commander Butthead. Um,
I'm a
you know,
goddamn deputy sheriff.
yeah. Oh my God. Um,
By the way, you got to see this video that Star made once
it's the
sometime.
most annoying video in the world.
Maybe
Nobody wants,
we don't have to
nobody
talk
wants to
about it
see
here.
it. No, it'll just make people angry. Um, but yeah, if you want to see it, it's called "I'm a Goddamn Deputy." Um, so this officer, I think he was with the police department, Ferro Ricardo. Um, I think he was just trying to, you know, make me calm me down and distract me a little bit from the pain from the handcuffs, and you know, and I was telling him that I'm a singer and a musician and I play guitar and stuff. And so he says, "Well, can you sing me a song?" And so I said, "Okay," and I started singing him a song. Um, and and it seemed like the guy was getting really choked up at the song because it was a very sweet song. Um, and and then by the time we got to the jail, this officer was saying over the radio to whoever at the jail, he was saying, "She is very nice. She's not fighting me. She's not, um, you know, she's not resisting or anything like that." He says she's very good. She's very nice. Um, you know, so, and I had also said to him, I said, you know, how can you justify working this kind of a job? Why don't you quit your job and learn some real skills that aren't injuring people, you know, for a paycheck? And a different way to support your family. Do something honorable and something good and, you know, helpful to people. I know you think that you're helping people. And he even told me that he had been a thug when he was a teenager and got in trouble with drugs and he went to jail or juvenile hall or something. And so that's why he became a cop. And he disclosed that to me, confided in me that stuff. And I said, you know, and I know that you think that that was a good thing and that they helped you and everything when you were, you know, a teenager and by going to jail, but really going to jail just creates criminals. That's all it does. And you're not helping people. You know, he said he mentioned something about, well, you know, I've helped children get away from parents who were abusive. And I said, have you ever taken a child from an abusive CPS agent that was trafficking them and stole them fraudulently from their parents? Have you ever returned a child who was being injured by the system to a loving family that they were kidnapped from by the system? And I think he knew what I was saying. And then he started to say to me, "Well, I'm getting ready to retire, and I am going to quit this job soon." And you know, he almost like it was like he heard what I was saying, and you know, and I swear, I think the man was in tears by the time he let me out at the jail, and telling them, "No, she's not resisting. She's very nice. She's very good," you know, and you know, trying to get it so that they wouldn't injure me anymore, you know, because he knew what they would do to me once they took me out of the car and into the jail. And they did. They continued to assault me the whole time for 15 days, you know. And the things I witnessed inside of that jail would, you know, I mean, should be a federal case of human trafficking and psychological warfare. What they are doing in there, I witnessed it. I witnessed the psychological abuse that they're doing to these girls and scooping them up off the streets. They live under bridges. All the girls knew each other in the jail. They'd been in there time and time again. So it's this whole racket, this whole routine. They scoop them up. They trump up charges on them, make up something, you know. They drove them into that state of oppression in the first place, to be living under a bridge, you know, by just things like what they did to me, just destroy their life, and then to where they can't fight for themselves or fend for themselves and end up, you know, without a way to live and end up trapped in the system. And they just keep scooping them up, putting them in jail. They get them strung out on drugs. They're giving them the drugs in the jail. Twice a day, they're giving them hard drugs like Suboxone and I don't know what all, but they're hard narcotics, drug addict narcotics, keeping them addicted.
Is that the kind that you were allergic to? Or I saved your life once because
Same
there was
drug.
a
Yes,
drug
that's the
given to
one
you.
that doctor gave me for my severed tendon, and it almost killed me. That's the drug they're giving them in that jail.
Star, let me tell the audience a little bit what happened. And, you know, that doctor gave you that for your pain, I think for your shoulder. And
Right, I had a severed tendon in my shoulder.
and you took it and you stopped breathing. And I had for about 6 hours, I had to keep waking you up about every 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It was so bizarre.
And then I'd pass out and stop breathing again, and you'd bring me to again and shove some coffee down me or some water, and I'd throw it up, and then I'd pass out again and stop breathing again. And this went on all night long.
And did you?
Just from one of those Suboxone pills.
So,
And then I remember also our friend Dave, who's a chemical engineer, he looked it up and he said that one pill that I took was equivalent to 12, all at once, taking 12 750 milligram Vicodins. How can they even give anybody something like that? And they're just dishing this stuff out to the girls in the prison, in the jail. Not even a prison. They said that prison would be much more desirable than that jail. Some of them had been in prison and said that they would rather be in prison than in this jail, where they're constantly bombarding you. It's an echo chamber in there, and the noises are startling and loud, like shotguns going off all the time. The locks on the doors, unlocking and locking, people coming in and shouting at you. I never saw a woman come into the female cell block. Only men came in there yelling at the women, whether they were naked or whatever, they were getting ready to take a shower or anything. Only men were allowed to come into that cell block of the women and intimidate them and yell at them and shout orders at them. And they would have the TV blasting all the time, really loud, and it's an echo chamber. And all the movies that they play are violent movies and movies of torture, like bondage and dominance kind of stuff. Really sick, twisted movies, and they're blasting them full blast, so you can't even hear them because it's so echoey in there. And this noise is just woo, 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 constantly. Until after, like for me, after 15 days, I could not shake all of that frequency attack on me. And I'm still having nightmares from it. over 2 months later. It's still embedded into my psyche. And I wake up crying hysterically. And I know that happened to you too, Joe. From what they did to you. So it's making it very difficult for me to study and research and retain information.
Yeah.
And be able to, exact, my own defense or whatever. Like I should even have to defend myself over something I didn't do. Or anybody should. They do this to people every day. It's just a routine for them. And they're just raking people off the streets in there and feeding them drugs, and they get paid for every 24 hours. So much money, probably $1,500 per head count every 24 hours, something like that, that's in a jail. And this is how they get paid. So they don't have any motivation or to not do what they do. They have to keep perpetuating this because it's how they get paid. That's how they make a living, is by injuring people and human trafficking. And that's exactly what human trafficking is. We also got very, very sick. So when we were, when the court date was coming up, we were just sick. I mean, there's no way that we were even going to show up because, I mean, why would I? They already had threatened me and assaulted me and everything. So, but it was the public defender who suggested that we call in because we were sick. So she sort of gave us, I guess, a reason not to be there in person, that we could call in and do the hearing by phone.
Yeah.
But so at least that bought us a little bit of time or whatever to, work on some more things, because I've just been too stifled and traumatized to really.
Was your first time before a judge within 48 hours of being arrested?
No, I think it was within 72 hours, maybe. I can't even remember. I have not been able to just concentrate on any of it to put a timeline together, or I'm just
aware of that because in my case, they brought me before a judge with an expired complaint because it had been 56 hours, and in California it was 48 hours they're supposed to do.
Right. They tried to offer me some type of form to fill out to let me out on OR, and that was, I didn't fill it out. I didn't sign it because they were just trying to get a name from me, and they were trying to create joinder with me, and to contract with me or get me to give them something, and I wasn't going to give them anything. And I didn't believe that they were going to let me out without getting some money from me or something. So that was just a trick, trying to get me to give them a name or an address or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would still just keep trying to railroad me or whatever. So I didn't comply with that. And of course, they're going to say, well, if you would have just done what we said, maybe we would have let you out and you wouldn't have, or we would have taken you to a judge or whatever. But you were not following our orders, so you brought this on yourself.
Look, they have, it's them that has the responsibility because they're taking, a person into custody. It's their responsibility to take care of you and, tend to your needs and all that, you have no responsibility to them whatsoever, especially since they assaulted you, violated
Right.
you in
And
so
when
many
they
ways.
finally did get me into the booking process, they started asking me questions like, um, do you have any allergies? And I said yes, to like sugar, grains, nuts, red, fluoride, everything, citric acid. I can't eat any of those things. They'll kill me. They're highly toxic to me. And so what do? They feed me nothing but those foods that I listed, that I said I was allergic to. So that I put in a request to the medical staff at the jail several times, 4 times. One time they saw me and I said, well, I'm not going to allow you to take bodily fluids or use any electronic devices on me or examine me in that way. But I will tell you, I'm allergic to all of these foods that they're feeding me, and they're making me very ill. And basically the doctors told me, oh, there's nothing we can do about that. You'll have to take that up with the chefs, the jail cooks. I'm going to have to take up my health issues with the jail cooks who are feeding me vomit in there. Essentially, I don't know what else to call the food that they were giving us. I wouldn't let a cockroach eat it. It was the most despicable garbage ever. And then there was also this Kool-Aid that they were giving everybody twice a day. These little packets of Kool-Aid, and the first ingredient on them was citric acid. So I was trying to tell the girls that citric acid is synthesized from black mold, Aspergilla niger. And they were like, oh, we love that stuff. And they were starting to line up at my door to get that packet of Kool-Aid. And they were shaking like this. They were just like, can we get your Kool-Aid? Is it my turn to get the Kool-Aid today? I mean, they were totally addicted to this Kool-Aid. And so I think that had something to do with, there's something that they're doing to those girls in there. It's really, really, it's just a crime against humanity, and a psychological warfare. All the things. The girls, they get these drawings that are very sick, twisted images, really sick and twisted. I mean, I'm not just being like a little old lady and, oh, that's, evil or whatever. No, very, very demented images that they're letting them get off of the jail commissary or whatever to color on, and then they're sticking them all over their walls. They stick them on the walls with toothpaste.
Am I getting this right? They have like coloring papers they're supposed to, draw?
Yeah, like coloring book images that they get from the jail commissary or whatever you call it. I don't know what they call it, but this is the choices of what they have to color are these really twisted, demented, sick, evil, witchy, weird images. Really demented. Nothing, not just like tattoo skull type images, but I mean demented, monstrous, sick, twisted stuff. And this is what the girls are coloring, and they're all like, oh, this one's my favorite. And they have 5 different versions of it plastered all over the walls of their cell.
So if this is like if the whole premise behind putting someone in prison is that, it's the Department of Corrections, right, where they're supposed to be fixing someone, changing them, making them into a better person.
We have an RV pulling in here. right now where I'm sitting. So I think I'm going to try to move.
I'll take you off the camera. Me solo layout. Okay, you're off. And so I'm talking here, and my thought about corrections is that this is their justification. When you go into a courtroom, they have, as a defendant, and there's this whole lawsuit against you. Their whole justification of all this is that it's for your benefit. You're the beneficiary of a court case. And let's see, just unmute that for a second. I don't know. I don't even see Star moving in the. Oh, she disconnected. Hopefully they'll get back on. One of the things you can do in that regard is you can say, I've heard someone say this. It's something like, I refuse that benefit. And yeah, because if they they're sentencing you to time in jail or something, you can refuse the benefit, because they're thinking that it's corrections. They're offering you to be corrected. And well, as you can see from the testimony of Star Hills in today's show, it's just horrific. Thank you, Vicky. And Star has a Facebook page too. I think it's Star Hills, and then it's got a 9 in it. See, Star. She's got a couple. There we go. Look at that. Who knows how long it'll be on there? She's starting up another one. Some of her accounts are so old. It's before, people even had cell phone numbers that they could register the accounts with. So, yeah, she's 66 and a half years old. So, they're really messing with someone there. Hi, Cole. I see you in the background. Give me a thumbs up when you're ready to come back on. I'll let them get everything appropriated there. Powder her nose and everything. Are you ready? Give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Oh, you are. All right.
2 thumbs up.
All right.
Like
2 of them.
Siskel and Egbert.
Cisco Kid was. I better not sing. They'll flag my show. If I bang this tuning fork, they'll flag the show for a copyright violation. Abraham says something here. The prison system is another big lie. It's a business, and they want people to come back. Thank you, Abraham. Star, the signal's not so good there. We're having all kinds of problems with your video. It really looks kind of interesting. Maybe you need to get a better so they'll work on getting the connection reestablished there. Okay, I see Star. She's back.
Is that
Yay!
any better?
That's better.
Okay.
It sounds solid so far.
Maybe Cole just refreshed it or something.
Just turn the Wi-Fi on.
Oh.
Great.
I would never be able to figure it out if I was left to my own device.
Thank you, Cole.
Thank you, Cole. So yeah, that was bizarre because I haven't seen an RV in that space over there by the gazebo, but all of a sudden they wanted to pull somebody in there while I'm sitting there talking.
Of course, Well, how about here's something I'm curious about. How is it? How are all the different levels of government culpable in this? Um, say, for instance, the Secretary of State of
Uh-oh, you're kind of breaking
Colorado.
up now. Copy. Back now.
How would the Secretary of State uh, be culpable? Just picking him out of thin air in the state of Colorado.
I have
No,
no idea
no idea.
because I think they're all just different agencies of the same tyrannical system. That they're all just in collusion with each other. So nobody's going to have oversight over the other agencies. They're just going to agree that what they did was fine and rubber stamp everything they do.
It's
I
their.
just don't
I would suggest
believe there's
it's.
any justice.
I would suggest it might be allegiance and this imaginary idea that through all of this stuff that somehow you're guilty,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and
No,
that's
even the average person walking down the street, 99% of those people would believe. They would see a cop with a taser on a little old lady sitting in a van and say, "What did that woman do?" Like the one of the cops that Cole talked to on the phone. He said that the parents at the school were calling the police station saying, "Why weren't those people arrested? Why didn't you have black helicopters flying over the school? Why weren't there SWAT teams there with flak jackets?" This is the world we live in. And the cop, and we have this on recording too. I guess I should get those recordings out there because he's telling, the parents, he's saying, "Look, let law enforcement handle this. You don't know the whole story, you know? But this is what the average person is thinking. Why weren't there black helicopters? Why didn't they arrest those people?" You know?
well, that's what a police officer said, and I don't believe what police officers say generally. As a rule, I'm very suspicious because I worked in a police station, the city of
Yeah.
Wauwatosa in Wisconsin,
Well,
and
even like the people that we were staying with, who I thought were my friends, had the same attitude. They were yelling and screaming at me, saying, "Why are you waging lawfare?" When I'm just saying I'm going to defend myself, that they assaulted me. "No, they didn't. It's just a parking ticket. Why are you making a big deal out of this?" And I'm like, "Really? You think that I just have a parking ticket and they kept me in jail for 15 days over a parking ticket when I mean, does that make any sense to you? I wasn't driving. I didn't park anything. I had nothing to do with the van being in the street. How is it that you think this is a parking ticket and that they can keep me in jail and torture me for 15 days over that? And
and
that I'm waging lawfare if I defend myself over that." And they were yelling and screaming at me, calling me all kinds of names and saying I'm just playing a victim and and to get off their property. And they were telling Cole to leave their property while I was in jail and telling him, my only firsthand witness, not to meddle with this affair. when he's the one who was calling everybody, trying to get things straightened out and understand what the heck's going on. I mean, he was my hero. He was the one defending me and recording everything, and you know.
Yay,
And
Cole.
these
We owe
people,
you a we
no,
owe
he's
you we owe we well, I'll have to say it later, you know, we owe him a debt of gratitude for taking care of you in a place where
yeah, and it was very brave of him to do all of that, to call those people, you know, not be afraid that them having his phone number or knowing where he was or whatever.
Yeah.
And, you know, confronting them and recording all those calls from the jail and running them up, you know, where people could hear them and stuff. And making posts about everything, you know, keeping people informed out there on the outside. You know, contacting all of my friends and everybody so that people could have an opportunity to call the jail or call the police or whatever and say, hey, what are you guys doing? You know?
One of our friends, Alan, uh, uh, sent something. Is that what you faxed in to the court?
No, I faxed in something having to do with the Siesta KV Trust, 1707, to bring the monarchy trust into this case. And I'm not fully familiar with all of that, but it's a little bit different route than what I normally, you know, would do. So I'm trying to learn more about that, but I'm just having so much brain fog and in trauma. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that whole concept. I know people for decades that I've heard using this cystic KV trust that was allegedly created for us to protect us. But do you know much about that, Joe? I know you've heard about it, and I have too, but I I've never gone. I really tried to go that route before, but I think there might be something uh,
When
there that can hold them accountable or move the court to a higher authority.
when you were having problems with your signal, I described how the whole premise of the prison system is is based on giving the defendants a benefit of corrections, where they're able to spend some time and you know, maybe find remorse for what they've done or whatever. Um, and I'm just saying this out loud because I've heard things and I'm bringing it forward as an idea. But I remember some suggesting that you could always say, you know, I refuse that benefit, like when they sentence you to, you know, time in jail or something like that, and that you could refuse the benefit.
Oh, you're breaking up again for me. I don't know if the rest of your audience hears it that way.
Oh no, it's your side. Um, so sorry about that, but I guess it'll get better. It'll go in and out. But the idea is that the judge is a trustee over a trust where you are the beneficiary, and you can, if you refer to yourself as the beneficiary, and you know, ask the judge if he's, you know, if he's going to be harming you today. Is your intention to harm me, the beneficiary, today, and are you willing to accept infinite liability for that? Sometimes that gets a judge to run out of the room. Um, I don't know. Can't can't say for sure and all this. I've never tried that. Let's see. Da, 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 da. Maybe you're back.
Now he says, "Oh, we switched again."
Well,
Round and around and around she goes. Where she stops, nobody knows.
oh yeah, you could sing us a song.
Oh, I wish I could, but I've had this cough now for a week, and my
That
voice
would,
is shot. It
yeah,
sounds so deep and hoarse.
yeah, that would make you more likely to cough.
But you can go on Earthica Star, and I
Mm-hmm.
sang a few songs just sitting in an RV where I was staying after I got out of the jail, and and one of them is I think it's called "Take All of Me," and that's the song that I had sang to the cop in the back of his car.
Nice.
And, but yeah, there's a few songs, so I was able to sing and play guitar a little bit, even though my hands were injured. I was really trying as hard as I could. Um, I'm not playing that good anymore, or able to sing that good, but I figured it would be good for my soul to just play some songs and not just talk about the bad stuff on YouTube. But
So it's their allegiance to ideas that aren't even codified, perhaps that makes them liable. And what is it that brings the racketeering aspect of this into play? Because certainly the city it's the city police that arrested you, right?
right, and then they take you to the sheriff detention center, which is where the jail is. And remember when you contacted somebody, the mayor or somebody, and they said there is no jail in Canyon City? What? They don't know that there's this major jail with all these cell blocks, but it's not called the jail. It's called a detention center.
She
It's
was
jail.
she was referring to it as um, a jail belonging to the city of Canyon City. It's interesting that there's all those big prisons and stuff there, but they don't. I don't think that the city actually contracts with them to put prisoners in there. So the the detention center you were in, I'm thinking was in the other city or Florence, is it?
Well, Florence is the city I was in where the school is, where they picked us up. But Canyon City is where I was in the jail.
Oh, okay. So maybe Florence does have something to say, and since we have the ear of the mayor there, we can report that crimes occurred in Florence in the jail.
Yeah. So, then there's the police in one town, and then you've got all these people riding by with jeeps and equipment, and then they take you to the main city, which is Canyon City, um, and that's where they have the jail. And in that jail facility, I don't know what it's called, a detention center or something. That's where they have the courts, and the courts are underground. So every time they took me to the court 3 separate times, they would shackle me and waist chain me to, handcuff me to a waist belt, and then shackle my feet in leg irons and have me walk down these long concrete corridors. And I told them I have hip problems. That there was a time where for 6 months I couldn't even walk. I was looking at getting into a wheelchair. And, over time with good nutrition and exercise, I managed to heal that condition, but I still have residual problems from that. And also I've had a knee that was blown out for the last year and a half from digging pots for planting trees, because our tillers and our equipment went out where I was working, and I ended up digging all the holes in the ground in rock and clay by hand with a shovel, and I blew out my knee, and it's never recovered. In fact, you know that you've helped me with frequencies trying to heal my knee, and I've been taking supplements and doing other stuff for that. But when they made me walk in those shackles, I had to go up and down these ramps, down these long corridors. And you have to walk with your feet really far apart or you'll trip over the chain between them. And you have no way to catch yourself because you're chained to a waist belt. And there's no way for me to, they didn't give me any materials or access to anything to be able to have any notes or anything to defend myself or to do any research or anything. So the first time that they took me to a court, it was a male judge, and so they had me shackled, and they take me, it was like 3 days after I'd been there already in jail, and Cole was the only one witness in the court, and there were at least 6 agents, all laden with guns, all around me. And there was probably 4 or 5 of male agents all leading me down these corridors in shackles. The shackles were just around my bare ankles. I had nothing to pad them or no socks or anything like that. So they were literally cutting into my skin and making me bleed. And by the time, and plus I have trouble because of my hip injuries and my knee, I have trouble going up and down stairs or up and down. So having to go up and down these ramps, shackled and no way to catch myself if I tripped, wearing these rubber shoes that stick to the ground, having to hold your legs far apart. It was just excruciating. And then so they get you in the courtroom, and now you're just already just so compromised and worn out. You've got all these agents surrounding you, just ready to tase you, I guess, if you don't say what they want you to say. But the first court I went in, and it was a male judge. I think his name was Larry something. And and he looked at me when I first went in the court, and they sat me down in a chair, and he looked me dead in the eyes, and he winked at me like this. He goes, twice. And I was like, oh, brother, I am in trouble now. I didn't know why he was winking at me or at all what that was about. But then when I went up to talk to him, I asked him, I said, is this a court of record? And he said, yes, it is. And I said, well, then on and for the record, I'm standing here shackled at the feet and chained at the waist and handcuffed to the waist. I'm here by force. I was kidnapped. I don't consent to any of this. And then he kind of stopped me and he said, are you employed? And I said, I work for free and I play for free. And then I said, and he didn't seem to like that very much at all, because, you know, they need you to be in commerce. They need you to be part of the monetary system to be able to use their commercial, you know, laws. All their laws are commercial. They don't have anything to do, you know, or what they call law. It's not law. It's just their tyranny is based in commerce, and they need to have you acting and employed. Employ means engaged in a ploy, not just any ploy, but with the government. All employment is government engagement in a plot, in a government ploy, for money. And so when I told him I work for free and I play for free, he didn't like that very much. And maybe he didn't want that on the record, because that sort of negates their whole authority.
I see what you're saying. He's running you through a script in order to get you on the record engaged with commerce.
Right, and wants to know how much money I make so that they can base how much they're going to charge me on that, you know, basically. What kind of bondage they're going to hold me in. So, you know, he didn't like that much. But anyway, and then
what else did he say?
and then so he asked me about that, the employment, and I said that. And then I just I said to him, I said, before I can proceed, I have to determine whether there's any conflict of interest. And I said, are you a de jure or a de facto magistrate? And right then he started yelling and said, if you say another word, I will hold you in summary contempt. And then the public defender rushed up to me. Oh, I also told him right at the beginning, I'm here standing in my own stead. I don't consent to anybody else talking for me or, you know, intervening on my behalf. So that right then, if you say another word, yeah, I'm going to hold you in summary contempt. And why would he say that? I just asked him, are you a de jure or a de facto magistrate?
So he refused to answer that question.
Right, and that was his response to that. If you say another word, I'll hold you in summary contempt. And then the public defender was right there in my face, and she says, you can't talk. You can't talk. Don't say another word. Don't talk. Don't talk. You know, and I just ignored her. She's not my counsel. I don't know her. Why are you even talking to me? You know, I didn't employ you. They gave me an opportunity at one time to contract with a public defender, and I said, no, thank you. I'm my own counsel. I'll stand in my own stead. Thank you very much. So as she jumps in trying to be my attorney, I just ignored her. And then so the judge said that, you know, I'll hold you in summary contempt if you say another word. And then he closed the case on the record and just motioned for them to get me out of there. But before they did, I said two more things. I said, am I being denied due process of law? And am I being denied access to this court? And then they drugged me out. And he didn't charge me with contempt. But he had already closed the record. Or if I had said those things before he closed the record, he might have charged me with contempt. And if that had happened, yeah, it would be a lot harder. Nobody can undo a judge's contempt order, except for that judge. And that could have made things really a lot more difficult. And I know it was pretty ballsy or whatever for me to even say another word, but I had to get that on the record. But it probably wasn't even on the record because he had closed the session. to say that, are you denying me due process of, or am I being denied due process of law? I didn't make it personal to him. I didn't say, are you denying me? I said, am I being denied due process of law, and am I being denied access to this court?
No, a judge can't just close the record. You have to have opportunity to object to him closing the record, and that is, I mean, that's obvious part of due process.
Right.
If
So maybe that is on the record. I don't know, But then, as we were also, as I was talking to people on the outside from the jail, Alan was also suggesting, don't try to get discovery, because if you do, they could drag things out and keep you in there for an indefinite time while they're trying to find other stuff on you, trying to dig up something else somewhere else. And we didn't want them to do that either, because maybe they would have found something that they would have construed, somewhere else. And we know that, there was another time where I was assaulted and kidnapped by them and robbed seriously of some serious cash. My entire family legacy at the time. And they lied about the whole story and, tried to rip my arm off and severed the tendons and tore the muscles and threatened me, all because I did the same thing. I didn't give them an identification. I didn't let them x-ray me. I didn't consent to them x-raying me in the jail.
Mhm.
And they tried to fabricate some charges because I had all this money from the sale of my family yacht of 32 years. And they tried to say that I got the money from drug dealing and trafficking and transportation, all this other stuff. They just invented all this stuff. And then stole all the money from me. And injured me really, really badly, really seriously. So I was a little worried about that they would try to come up with that, story from years before.
I've been in medicine all my life, so I kind of know, So, but I didn't want to make sure. 'Cause this might
You
be
suffered from that for a long time, all that
Right.
pain
So
in
we
your
didn't
shoulder.
go and get discovery because
to go get a job,
I'm
but
being
they-
told that
I'm retired,
that's
I'm
going to
gonna
open up a can
get a
of
job.
worms if I do,
Mm-hmm.
that they're going to try to find something else, trump up something else,
OB.
and possibly delay and keep me in jail indefinitely. And, I needed to get out of there because they were poisoning me, especially. But not just the poisoning with the food, but all of the frequency assault and the, yelling and the banging and the echoes and the torture movies and all of that. It starts to just embed itself into you to where you can't shake it later when you get out. That stuff's still permeating your dreams and permeating your waking thoughts.
Mm-hmm. How about the mold? You mentioned something about.
Well, that's another thing because, as you know, I almost died from mold inundation in my RV that had bad leaks, and then it filled up with fuzzy mold and ruined everything I had and almost killed me. And I became very sensitive to all mycotoxins after that, and had to, for the next 2 years, all I ate was antifungal foods and couldn't tolerate anything that mold would survive on in the body. And so in the jail, they blow the vents directly on you in these beds. And I even heard from one of the girls in there who witnessed the repair guys who were cleaning the vents take out the filters and that they were all full of mold. But it's a cold, damp air that they're blowing really hard right on your beds in the jail.
Tell me more about the mold that she. How did she say that about the mold on the filters?
She said that she saw the guy removing the filters, the repair guys, and that they were like some kind of cardboard or something, and that it was just covered in mold when he removed these filters. So she was watching him, I guess, out through the windows of the jail or something, and witnessed it. But and then the girls in the jail had a way of taking the plastic forks and breaking them, and they'll give you some supplies like toothpaste and stuff in a big plastic Ziploc bag, and they would break the forks, the plastic forks, and they would use them to stick in the holes of the vent to hold the plastic bag over the vent so it wouldn't blow right on you, so you could stop it from blowing on you. And that's the only way, if those girls didn't know how to do that, then I would have just been in there with that moldy, cold, damp vent just blasting on you. And so, that helped a little bit, putting the plastic bags over the vent and securing them with pieces of the combs.
Your health condition, Roger and I talk about this a lot, about mold and mycotoxins and all this. And I think when you treat it and with diet and antifungal types of medicines and stuff, that these things, they embed themselves, they go deeper into tissues, whatever, muscles perhaps. They go in they retreat to the hardest places to get them until later, when conditions change and they can come out again and flourish. So
Possibly, yeah.
So they were really putting your life at risk, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And all the foods that they fed me were highly fungal foods, like dried up hard white bread. And the heels, they typically give me a heel and maybe another slice of dried out hard white bread. Just, stuff I couldn't even identify, really. The peanut butter, they'd give you peanut butter and jelly with the bread, and it was like just sugar peanut butter and jelly just made with high fructose corn syrup, and probably citric acid is in all of those foods, which is mold. Or they'd give you like
I didn't believe that at
like
first
that
when you
slices
talked.
of cheese that's like plastic,
Could
It's
you
just
say that again?
horrible stuff. Like the cheese that comes in those plastic wrappers, slices, and it's just like plastic, the cheese itself.
Velveeta, perhaps?
No, not even. It's more like, it's just like some kind of substance that probably wouldn't even melt if you put a torch on it. It might melt, like it might warp like a piece of plastic, but it's not, it can't be possibly be food. I don't know what it's made out of. And, just other stuff that was like instant coffee, crystals, and stuff like that. Sugar, just white sugar, and the Kool-Aid. And they'd give you like oatmeal every now and then, but it was just like really gross. Or they'd give you a box of non-fat milk, like a little tiny box, and I'd try to save some for till the, to last a day or two or something, because you might not get one every day. And by the end of the day, it would be curdled already. And I'd go to like pour some out on it. They give you maybe like something like Cheerios or Fruit Loops or something like that. And I'd try to pour the milk out on it, and it'd just be chunks of barf.
Wow.
And I finally I conceded to eat that stuff because, well, it's like the more empty calorie stuff you eat, the hungrier you feel. And the more that it feeds mold in your body, the more the mold feeds off of it, the more it eats those nutrients up, and the more you feel hungry and feel like eating more. You want to eat more, but you don't have more. I mean, they give you hard, dried up biscuit or a shriveled up rubber piece of sausage or something. Just, one time they gave me it was like a hot dog that had been on the rotisserie for like a week or something. It was just dried out and hard and just disgusting. The only thing in there that I found that had any nourishment at all was that they once in a while, maybe every 2 or 3 days, they give you a pack of mustard. And in the mustard, the only ingredients were mustard, vinegar, and turmeric.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I'll give you everybody my Kool-Aid if you give me your mustard. Whoever's got mustard gets the Kool-Aid. Right? I finally had something that I could possibly even help with the pain, and because mustard is really good for you, and turmeric is really good, and the vinegar is not half bad either. So
Good.
and that's all that was in it.
You mentioned that you had correspondence with the food preparation people.
No, I didn't correspond with them, but I did send communications to the medical staff 4 times. And only the first time did they talk to me, and then the next 3 times they just ignored me. But one of the times that they came to the door, because it's the same medical people who come and dish out the drugs to the girls twice a day. And they show up at the door of the cell block, and they scream, "Medline!" And everybody lines up, shaking, ready to get their thing. They're just,
What did they scream?
Medline.
Okay.
And
like a medical line.
Right. And it's the same doctors that I went in and saw, and they're there. They show up there twice a day at the door to dish out these drugs, and all those girls told me themselves, they live under the bridge. They all know each other. They have certain hand signals that they bang on the walls to the other cell blocks, that they know each other's signals. And they have certain calls that they do through the vents that they recognize each other. Yeah, they're regulars in there. They're regulars, part of this human trafficking thing. They let them out for a little while, and then they go back and they find them under the bridge again and scoop them back up in there and feed them more drugs and keep them perpetually strung out on drugs, and then let them out again for a little while and just scoop up another round of people under the bridge, and they just keep rotating them like that. They all know each other. They've all been in and out of there time and time again.
Tell me about the orange.
Oh, yeah. So I told the medical staff that, they're poisoning me in here. And I sent the communications to them that I can't eat any of this food. It's all toxic to me. I'm allergic to it, and I'm getting very, very ill. And I demanded that they give me fresh fruit. And so finally, one day, an orange came on the food tray. Just an orange, healing and everything. And everybody in the jail got one. And the girls said they had not ever seen a piece of fruit, ever. So I figured that because I demanded one, they had to give everybody one. And but also when I told the food people when they came to give the girls the meds, I said, "Why have you not responded to my communications? I'm being poisoned in here, and I'm getting very sick. And I demand that I have some food that's for me, not this poisonous, toxic, moldy food that's feeding the mold that I'm allergic to." And they said, "Well, there's nothing we can do. You'll have to take that up with the chefs, with the cooks, the jail cooks." This is what the doctors are telling me, that I have to take it up with the jail cooks, my health problems. And I said to them, I said, "Does that make any sense? You're a doctor. I'm telling you that I need to be given food that's for me, that's not poisonous to me. And you're telling me I have to take that up with the cooks, my health problems?" Yeah, so that's what I mean by collusion and racketeering. They're all part of a system of injuring people in every way. The judges are in on it, the prosecutor, the public defender too. They're all getting paid by the same source, which means that's a conflict of interest with all of them. They're not independent agencies, you know.
What I learned from Ralph I. Fine when I interviewed him was that the judges in California are supposed to be paid, I think, by the state of California, not the county that they operate in. And that his major beef was that the counties were giving the judges financial benefits, like car rentals and these types of things. So in California, almost all the judges were on the take illegally from county benefits. And so they're supposed to be, somewhat separate in that regard, but in practice they're not. And then California wrote laws to make it, to make that legal for the judges to get money, inappropriately from the county they were
It
operating
seems like
in.
your volume's a little bit low, so I just thought I'd let you know. I'm not sure.
Okay. Let me see
I'm not
if I
sure if
can.
it is for everybody, but I have this turned up as high as it'll go. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's how they get paid. Like the judge, they take me into the court and they say, "Okay, well we're going to let you go on your own accord because we see that you don't have any money, but you have to come back here in 6 weeks, and if you don't show up here, then you'll be charged $5,000 and a warrant will go out for your arrest." Well, so if I don't show up, then that guarantees they're getting paid. They're getting a paycheck. They probably hope I won't show up because it's, if they don't have me in the jail and they're not getting paid a daily amount for a body count in the jail, that's giving them their paycheck. So if they let me go, they have to have another way to say, hold you in bondage And if you don't come back, then they can charge the taxpayers, I guess, or whatever.
Well, they end up issuing debt on your name,
Right, exactly.
and then they sell the debt or leverage it and all.
Right. It's like
How's
a
how's my
mortgage. Like
volume
a
here?
mortgage.
I have the adjustment knob.
I think it's a little bit better. Yeah.
Let me try a lot better. Here's the full volume. That's the most I can do.
Yeah. Well, that's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I don't blast the speakers off people's stereo system.
Yeah, I hope not too, because I would think that the sound is pretty good on my phone here. So I don't know
Nice.
why it sounded low. Let's see.
Pat writes in the comments, Pat Labar, sounds like what the rehabs have turned into, like jail. Tons of prisoners sent into them because of deals. People trying to help themselves are basically made worse. Thank you, Pat.
Yeah, that's it. You know, this whole system creates criminals. They create, you know, it's just like the monetary system of monopoly, where they monopolize all the goods and say they buy up all the wheat from all the farmers, and then they sit on it until people are starving, and then they sell it back to them for more after it's rotting. But they've added no value to it, and now they're poisoning people with it and charging them more money. And that's the system of monopoly and scarcity, creating scarcity, and then forcing people to use that system to buy it back from them. It's a profiteering, is what
I
it is.
think we've got a lot. We've got a lot on the record here. And your phone's probably going to run out at some point.
Yeah.
Can you think of a couple more things you want to say?
Well, just probably, I guess, go to YouTube and Earthica Star, all one word, and you can see the actual police stop, and you can see me telling the whole story pretty much chronologically. And if anybody feels like calling the Canyon City, Colorado
It's
administration,
not Canyon City. It's because I called them and I found that wasn't it.
well, but
It
that's
was
where I was. So I'm just saying that's Fremont County, Colorado, and whoever you want to get through to there,
Florence.
um,
I think it was Florence in Fremont County, huh?
well, Florence is the town where the school was, but Canyon City is where I was in the jail. Whether they tell you that or not, that's where I was. It's called something detention center. Fremont
Okay.
County Detention Center, I believe. And the Fremont County, it's where the court is also. The jail and the court are the same building. And it's in Canyon City, Colorado. So if you want to call the attorney general, or call the district attorney, or call the sheriffs, I sent communications to the sheriff right there at the jail facility, saying I wanted a legal packet, and I wanted to make a federal complaint and some other things, and that I also mentioned acting under color of law and impersonating and torture and terrorism and poisoning and all these other things. And he actually signed that communication and sent it back to me and just said, get an attorney.
Wow.
And so I have his wet signature on that, and he returned that communication to me. So that's I'm going to take some pictures of that so that people can witness that also. But yeah, if anybody wants to just hold them accountable and call them up and say, "What are you doing? You know,
Can I
why are
give
you
your
doing
email
this?
address on
Why are
this?
you doing this to people?" Yes, my email address is earthican_world@yahoo.com. And that's EARTHICAN_WORLD @yahoo.com. Earthican_world.
Got it up on the screen.
So if
Yes.
anybody has any suggestions, or
Do you have a Proton mail thing too?
I do, I haven't really gone into it, but I think it's just Earthica at Proton.
Mhm.
I don't check it too often.
Right. Somehow there's a way to. There's an app for that you can put on your phone, and then you get alerts when
Right.
new messages come in.
Yeah, maybe I'll
I
get
find
more
that
in touch with that because I know it's a little more private or whatever.
it's supposed to be.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I appreciate any support, you know, in any way that people have. Um,
We're just asking that people, are good to one another and be, respect one another and all this kind of stuff. And we've seen the depths. You've reported from the depths of the belly. Now that was that in a prison? You said a sheriff's detention center. So that's, they say, is worse conditions than like a federal prison.
yes, that's what the inmates in there were saying. And some of them, you know, one girl came in who had spent 18 years in prison. Ever since she was 18 years old, she was barely even 40. And they had just picked her up again. She had only been out of prison for a couple of months, and they picked her up and put her in the jail cell with me. And she was telling me that even the prison would be a much better option than being in this jail. That's how torturous and tyrannical it is.
It makes you wonder if some people don't just commit crimes just so they go to the prison.
Well, I think some of those girls in there do. They believe that they're criminals now. They're so institutionalized that they're actually defending being there because they have a roof over their head. And just think about this. This is Colorado, and they live under bridges. And it snows. It gets really brutally cold there, and the wind blows like 70 miles an hour. You know, it's really brutal weather. And so they would rather have a roof over their head, food, 3 meals a day, and their drugs dished out to them. They're all addicted to heroin and different drugs, so they're getting those kind of drugs in there, and they have meals and they have clothing and shelter. So they would rather be there, I think, than under the bridge.
May I ask you a question? When they asked about allergies, did you bring up anything about your allergies to specific drugs?
No, no, but they did ask me if I was addicted to any drugs or on any drugs or anything like that, and I just told them no.
And they were asking you about allergies that were food related, correct?
Right. Yeah.
So they weren't asking you about pain medications, of if you were allergic to pain medications.
Right. They might have, but I think they just asked if I was on any kind of medications or if I would be having any kind of withdrawal symptoms while I was in there from anything,
I know
including
that
nicotine or anything like that.
I know that
Speaking of
you.
which, I I did wish that I had some nicotine while I was in there, but I only, I don't smoke it. I just use a vape. Um,
That that can't be
but it
so
would
good
have
for
been
your lungs.
nice. No, but when
Um,
you're so traumatized, you do kind of wish
yeah,
that you could smoke a cigarette once in a while in there.
I'll
Of
bet.
course, they would never. They don't let you. I think in the old days, or maybe even in prison, they people have a way of getting tobacco or nicotine or something, but not in a jail.
I'm getting at something that's I feel is pretty important here. I remember that that Dr. Bird from Bakersfield had prescribed you this. You say Suboxone,
Yeah,
and but you had told him on the record, before that that you have had reactions to a certain kind of class of pain medications. What was
right.
that?
And I can't tolerate any type of pharmaceutical at all, and that I wouldn't even take that if my life depended on it. But he was insistent. Well, see, the thing was, is that Dr. Birds, he had treated me with holistic thing, electronics and magnetism and stuff and herbs and in the past. And I did not know why he was offering me this pharmaceutical drug, Suboxone. But I was in so much pain and you were there, so you remember. I felt like my arm was being ripped off of me and I was screaming in pain. And so you rushed me to that doctor and in my van while I was screaming my head off. Every time we hit a bump, I was just it went out of my mind. Felt my arm was just literally being ripped off. And then I told the doctor, you'd also gone to other doctors with me to read the MRIs and stuff, and they wouldn't, and they threw me out of their office. You were there in the examining room with me in Santa Barbara, California, where the doctor told us because it was a police related injury, they would not talk to me. They would not examine me or see me and made us leave their office. Remember that?
I remember you talking about it, and I was there, um, and I just remember us leaving kind of disappointed. I don't know if this was the same place. I remember one guy was a therapist or something, and he was trying to sell you on numerous visits, like you would have to drive back there every week, from Bakersfield
Right.
all the way to Los
That was the
Angeles.
guy down in Newport Beach. Yeah, he did some sort of other therapy. But this
There
was a
was another.
doctor. This was
There was another one I
an
remember.
orthopedic,
There's another
an
one I remember. We
orthopedic
had to
who,
walk up step. We had to walk up steps to get in there. And I remember just sitting in the office or the reception area. Maybe I remember but anyway, that was the case. They did deny you uh, because it was a police related incident, and I
right,
think you could sue them just for that.
right, because I went and I had MRIs taken, but uh, then my doctor said, well, you need to go to the specialist to read the MRI. And we traveled like hour and a half away to go to a special doctor. And then once he realized that the injury was from a police assault, he would not read the MRI. He wouldn't even talk to me anymore. Just said, "Get out of my office."
So this is another uh, this is another evidence of the extent of um, the racketeering that goes on, because that doctor's in fear of something, uh, because they're trying to cover up the horrible things that the police do to people.
Right. Oh, I remember when I called Dr. Birds too, and he was up in his 80s, and I had always known him to be a holistic doctor. who had treated me with herbs and magnetics and electronic stuff, and then he wanted me to do this drug, but for the pain. Um, but when I first called him, this was a long time ago, and I had been assaulted by the police, and I called him up and I said I was assaulted by the police, and the first thing he said to me, this doctor in his 80s, he said, "Were they real police?" And I said, "I don't think so. I think they were probably impersonating." And he said, "We better not talk about this on the phone. You need to come into my office right away." That was old Dr. Birds. He's dead now, but yeah.
Wow. Do you think we got everything we needed to say?
Yeah, and probably more. And maybe we'll do it again, you know, when I fully thought they were going to just dismiss this case on the 28th of October, did the phone hearing. And you can also hear that on YouTube. So just to let your audience know, on Earthica Star YouTube, I
Well,
uploaded the hearing.
I'll tell you, I went there and I didn't see it. I saw the one where you're sitting and you've got your robe, or you've got a shawl or something. And I saw a bunch of the songs and I looked after that, but I don't see the arrest on your YouTube channel.
You may have to go back a few videos. Well, maybe
It
I
was,
put it to where it's not so searchable. I may have to make it public.
if you
Maybe I
want to,
can. Yeah, I
you
might have.
could.
I might have just taken it off for temporarily until we got through the
Well,
court thing. But
Pat says, I wish I could have caught this from the beginning. Well, I think Facebook will let you go backward too, so you could scroll back. Or as soon as we're finished, Pat, you'll be able to find this show again. Here, let me put some of the places up. Oh my goodness, the mouse wasn't working. Remedy, let's see, fb.com/remedy report. And that works until someday when it doesn't. And then Remedy
well, I
Coin.
remember after the last show we did, Joe, and I told you these people. I start talking about human trafficking and stuff like that. I know you've had some controversial guests on there, but they might just stifle your show and shut you down. And sure enough, what happened?
Oh, this is important to know. You're right, Star. You did in the last show. I think you referred to this as human trafficking. And all right, let me think about this carefully. Facebook started demanding that I turn on my GPS to, I want to say it was to authenticate or to further verify and I got the impression that they wanted to verify that I wasn't, outside the United States. So I waited. I objected for a long time. I was just furious about it because of what happened in Bakersfield. And maybe you can verify this while you're on the record. That they told, that Alan said that the police had said that they had been authorized to kill me on sight because I had special skills.
Right. They didn't elaborate on what those skills were, but they said, they could kill you on sight because of your skills. And, and they also threatened Alan, if he didn't turn you in within 48 hours, that they would fabricate drugs on him and put him in prison and have him killed in prison. Is, in a nutshell, that's what they threatened him with.
And I think the special
To seek refuge. After they busted in my house looking for you. And then threatening Alan's life, and essentially, threatening you, threatening Alan in my home was threatening me to also, we had to run.
sorry, I was a little overjoyed. I was just thinking, I have special skills.
You are special, Joe.
Thank you, Star.
Definitely a special. You're a special case.
I'll go with that.
I can't believe the stuff that you get away with covering on your show, and you don't get shut down. But then something like this, I just had a feeling they were going to mess with you on this one. So it's not like we're being careful of what we're saying, but we don't want to get you shut down.
I have plenty of other platforms I can go to besides Facebook, and again, if you guys aren't already following me on these other platforms, there's a whole list of them there on that page at remedycoin.com/remedy report. There's a whole list of them. Twitter. There's Rumble. I need to get on Gab and some of these other ones. But what I really need help with right now is Rumble. That could be a big opportunity there. So if you don't have an account on Rumble, maybe the guests or the viewers would be so kind to get an account there and subscribe to Remedy Report.
Right, and I wasn't able to get on a lot of those kind of things like Telegraph and Gab and stuff because you have to have a phone. And thank goodness for my friend Emily who provided me with a phone now, so I can get on some of those other social sites. At least while I have a phone.
And while you have a phone, get an account at voice.google.com so that you have a permanent number that you'll be able to use for all your social media in the future. And it won't be tied to a commitment on a monthly phone bill.
Right.
That's what I've done. And it's worked out. There's been so many years where I didn't have, two nickels to rub together, as they say.
And I haven't had a phone, but maybe just a couple of brief times I've had a phone that somebody else has provided for me for a short time, just if I were traveling or something and needed to be able to, communicate. But for many years, probably 15 years, I've only had a phone twice for a very short time. So I'm getting more into the hip world, the communication world.
Yeah. Yep. Well,
I just wish I knew how to use a phone.
Yeah. So there we go.
Well, thank you, Joe. I think we should probably let you wrap it up. And I sure appreciate this was kind of on the spur of the moment, but I think we did pretty good, especially with my brain fog and not being able to really hold on to a thought much these days.
Your next court hearing is November 15th. That's what I heard from the call. Yeah. And then I try to do these things. I mean, I've lost sleep over your case, over this whole matter. Now I'm sleeping okay, but in the first early days and stuff, it was hard. They're just doing things that just aren't aren't right, and their feet need to be held to the ground somehow, to the fire or whatever you call it.
Right,
And
and I've been affected also by what they did to you back in 2009, and I know that still to this day, how long has it been? It's 14 years later, you still have trauma and you still go through, I mean, I don't know how long I'll be, you know, if there's ever going to be a day that I can just shake this off and not, cry when I think about it and it not affect me so deeply.
the other thing about this, people say, well, why don't you go see a psychologist or something? Well, the psychologists in Bakersfield, anyway, I had a friend who went to one, and she asked if the police were eavesdropping on it. And the psychologist nodded, yes. And so, you can't even get the kind of mental health that you might need to help deal with the trauma.
Right, and they'll just use that against you and say you're non compos mentis and a ward of the court. Just to railroad you further. Say, oh, well, you have a mental problem now if you're seeing a psychiatrist.
I specifically said psychologist. I meant
Or a
to.
psychologist.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was, I had a roommate in Colorado who was the president of the Psychotherapy Association of Colorado. And I'm sorry to say, but she is about the most psychologically deranged person I think I've ever known. She's the president of the association.
Wow.
Yes, completely psychopath woman.
Well, now is this because of your do you think your perspective on that is colored because of your knowledge about the way things are? How do I put this? I mean, I really don't want to make this show about her.
Right. Well, I suppose, it could be, but I mean, I'm not the only one who sees that, but
I think sometimes
she is deranged and into some very deranged practices that she conducts. So I don't want to, spill the beans on her or whatever, but I'm just saying,
we
just
just did.
one of the craziest people I've ever known. Dysfunctional.
We just did under oath.
Totally dysfunctional.
All right. Thank you so much for your willingness to share with us today. And we'll see where this goes from here. I'm really hopeful that we can get it together and get you some remedy. They said they were going to give you. They said it was okay that you're charging them all those silver coins on each of those 20 instances.
Silver dollars. Yeah, for each charge. For each assault. Yeah.
And you're estimating it was 20 assaults.
Yeah, something like that. So we
20.
we just came up with a ballpark figure, what, 3.7 billion silver dollars that they owe me.
No, $3.7 billion worth of silver dollars, but they owe you physical silver.
Right.
So I have somewhere I calculated it and had the number of silver dollars, and then I multiplied it per ounce, so the price per ounce. So it's a lot, and I think it's going to be more than one Brinks truck can hold. And just the fact of them having to
So
to
if the
get.
Hells Angels are listening, we're probably going to need some of you guys to follow the Brinks truck when they send it to me and secure that for us, because we'll be wanting to put that physical silver into an inheritance for all of, humanity and people who are injured, and be able to, take care of people's needs and stuff that have been injured by the system. So that's what that would be if we ever did physically get that kind of resources. We could use it to really help a lot of people. And and especially with Joe's remedy coin and anti-money and forgiveness capital, we could enter them into those types of cryptos that could really benefit humanity on a large scale. So
Thank you. You've been a big supporter of my work on Facebook in those 3 projects, and I want to thank you, Star, very much for that.
I'm going to thank you too for, even the whole idea of anti-money and remedy coin and forgiveness capital, just to think up, even if they never come to fruition, just if more people would just try to conceptualize what this means for humanity as a whole and how it could help people and how we could undermine that fictional monetary system and have a different idea of what value is. It's so important that we come to these realizations. And
Vic,
I think the work you've done is some of the most important out there in the whole world that exists. But it's hard for people to wrap their head around.
thank you for being here on the show today, and I hope you have a really that things work a little better for you. You'll be in our thoughts about helping to try to help you with your trauma, stuff like that, so that you're more synthesized and coherent. That's kind of my wish for you right now.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, this is the end of the show.
Beanie.
Goodbye.
Thank you, everybody.